All right, so we've done 2 sections so far. This whole chapter is on right triangles. So the first part of the chapter is about, first of all, the Pythagorean theorem. So remember, you always had a cross from the right angle. It's the C. You might want to point at that and write longest, because sometimes they don't draw the picture for you. They just give you the 3 numbers, right? So then you have to know that the C is the longest. The 2 that hug the right angle are called the legs. It doesn't matter who's A or who's B. We talked about that, how you can change it up if you want to. And our Pythagorean theorem says that A squared plus B squared equals C squared. So you'll be missing one of the legs. And that's kind of going to be your issue, both on your quiz tomorrow and on your test, is knowing what you're supposed to use. Like, do I use the Pythagorean theorem, or do I use my special right triangles, or do I use trigonometry? So I think in the corners of these, we should kind of say when to use it. So I'm going to put a little extra box right here. You'll use the Pythagorean theorem when you know 2 of the 3 sides. For the other stuff, both the trig and these 2 special kinds, you only know 1 of the sides. All right? So let's write that. You might want to put it in shouty caps. It's when you know or are given 2 of the sides. So on your quiz tomorrow, if you don't have 2 sides, you don't use the Pythagorean theorem because it won't work. All right, so you do that when you know 2 of the sides. That's why if you're a highlighter person, which I kind of am, and some of my people first semester got into using the highlighters, that's kind of something I would highlight so it stands out to me. Stay away from the Pythagorean theorem if you don't have 2 sides. All right, on the other, let me click out of here. The other thing you're asked with this is to classify the triangles as either right, acute, or obtuse. For all of those, you are going to grab the C and square it. So it's the C that you grab first. And again, you'll know which one that is because it's the longest side. You're going to grab that, and you're going to leave a little empty box right here, and you're going to compare it to A squared plus B squared. Okay, so you're going to make a little box right here, and what you fill this in with will determine whether you're dealing with a right, acute, or obtuse. All right? Just make sure you have time to get caught up right nice and neat. So if it's a right triangle, that box will be filled in with an equals. And there was a section in Delta Math, and there is on your quiz today, that it's going to say to click on the ones that could be right triangles. You have to grab the longest side and compare it to the other 2. If it's equal, you click on it. If it's not, you don't. Okay, so you run it through your calculator and you check. For the acute, when you grab that longest side and you square it, you get something less than what you get when you add the other 2. Like maybe it was a 10 and you got 100, and the other 2 sides squared added up to 78. Oh, no, that's not true. 142. All right. So less than is acute. So I'm going to highlight that. I'm going to highlight that. And the obtuse will be the answer when that C squared runs bigger. The key to this, though, is make sure you grab this C first. So C on the left. Okay, that's important. And remember, the C is the longest side. So you might want to put this in a little box down here. C is, because they usually don't give you a picture with these. It just gives you 3 legs, like 17, 19, and 32. And it asks you to classify it. So you have to know that that 32 would be your longest side. All right, that was our last week, Tuesday and Wednesday. All right, then we said, well, maybe you only know one side. So these 2 are both used. Okay, so I'm going to kind of put a little box in both of them down here. When you know one side, okay, and the other thing that you have to have is these angles. You have to know that it's a 45, 45. I like to put little dots above that. If not, you can't use it. So here's how you'll know, okay? They'll either put it in here so that Lena can go, oh, this is the 45, 45 stuff. Or you might want to underneath here write, sometimes they use this one when they talk about the diagonal of a square. Okay? So anything about a square, because this is actually half of a square. Alright? So anything about a square, you use this guy. You might want to go dashed and kind of go like this to kind of complete the square so you kind of know this guy. I'm going to run off the edge of my paper. Sorry, guys. Boom. It's half of a square. Alright. So when you either see the 45, 45, or they talk about it being half of a square, or they mark it as being half of a square. So I have a lot of little highlighters on there so that you know when to use this relationship. Because it's half of a square, the legs are the same. Okay? So whatever this is, I'm going to put an X on it. So is this. So we're going to over here write legs are equal. So if this leg's 8, that leg's 8. So it's easy. This leg's 9, that leg's 9. Okay? To get the hypotenuse, you guys remember what you multiply the leg by? To get this hypotenuse, we multiply it by something. Oh, that's right, I'm recording. We multiply it by the square root of 2. So your hypotenuse is the leg, and put a dot there for times, the square root of 2. That was last week on Thursday. I'm going to have you draw a little bar here, though. So this is if they give you the legs. So if you're taking the quiz tomorrow and there's a 10 on this leg, you're just going to go, well, that one's 10, that one's 10 root 2. It's very easy. The problem was when they gave you the hypotenuse, I'm going to draw a little arrow here, and you had to go back to a leg. Well, if we multiply to go forward, what will we do to go backward? Divide, correct? So you might want to write yourself a note that the leg is equal to the hypotenuse divided by the square root of 2. If you have another color, I'm going to go blue here. Those we don't leave the roots on the bottom. And we said to get them off, we multiply the top and the bottom by the square root of 2. And always then on the bottom, root 2 will be a 2. So you might want to kind of start. Can't put a full example up there, but this is what happens. So this is, if you're given the leg, let's write ourselves a little note here. Now we're good. That's good. So that was last week on Thursday. And we're going to work a little bit with that when I'm done with this note card. We're still going to kind of be in here for about 10 minutes before we go take a big quiz. The other one, the 30-60, that one they will never really hide it on you. You're going to know that it's a 30-60 because you're going to see either a 30 here, or if they don't put a 30 there, they'll put a 60 here. So one of the two has to be there. If you don't see it, it means it's either the Pythagorean theorem or it's going to be a trigonometry problem, which we haven't learned yet. So on your quiz tomorrow, it's all about the Pythagorean theorem and the special triangles. So this one, when we talked about it, we said it's all about the short side. So I'm going to go highlight that. If you don't have a highlighter, you might want to really bold it. Okay? You need the short side. Okay? So let's go ahead and write that. Need short. All right. And then if you have it, so let's put a little box right here. I call it the worker box in our notes. These are nice and clear notes. This is pretty. I'm writing really neat. You should be proud of me, Lena. I have that shirt. We could have dressed up for Twins Day. And I have the pants and sort of the shoes. We could have done twins. All right. Oops, I'm recording. I'm not going to start. All right. So if you have the short side, all right, then it's easy. All right. Remember, this is the hypotenuse. I'm going to put a little H on there. If you have the short side, your hypotenuse, I'm just going to write height, is twice it. Alright? So if you have the short side, maybe it's 7, you double it to get your hypotenuse. Okay? And again, it makes sense. We multiply the short by 2. You might even want to write that. We multiply by 2 if you like to do that. To get the long side, we do the short times the square root of 3. So that's kind of how we get it, but we need that short first. So we have to talk about how we get it. Okay? So how do you get that short side? Because I need it. Even if they don't ask me for it, I have to find it first. So down here, we're going to write how we get it. If given the hypotenuse, I'm just going to call it height. It's too long of a word for me to write over and over again. So if you're given that hypotenuse, again, it's always that long side or across from the right angle. Well, if I double to get there, I'll divide by 2 to get back. So you might even want to write times by 2 to get there. We divide by 2 to go back, but we can just write it right here. The short, which is what we need, equals the hypotenuse divided by 2. We have just enough space on here. Again, you need that short side first. Same thing for our long side. If given, I'm running out of space, long side, this is a great notepad, I'm very proud of myself. Your short equals your long divided by the square root of 3. We'll go to the side here. I'm going to highlight that. You're always looking for that short. If you're given it, great. If not, find it and then head back to the worker box. Guys, and then we're going to leave that out. We're going to go use that in our notes for about 5 to 10 minutes. We have one little sheet in our notes we need to. I'm going to stop recording up here. You guys keep writing.